All right, here is my Biology 2 lab presentation on the American dog tick. So starting off, we got some taxonomic information. The scientific name of this species is Dermacentor variabilis. The family is Ixodidae, order is tick, and then the class is arachnid. And then here's some of the structures on the top of the tick, the surface of the tick. And then here we have some of the key evolutionary relationships. The Dermacentor variabilis has a parasitic relationship with its host, meaning the tick benefits while the host is harmed. The main targets of Dermacentor variabilis include mammals, but tend to include mostly humans and dogs. The most fit individuals, that is for ticks, are those large enough to hold substantial food from the host and small enough to be undetected from the host. While many insects and birds occasionally eat ticks, there really isn't enough of them to make a true difference on the tick population. And then, as far as the species behavior goes, the Dermacentor variabilis is a 3-host tick, meaning if it completes a full life cycle before death, it will have had at least 3 different hosts. And then the key here is on the at least part. This just means that as long as they do end up reaching that full life cycle, they're going to have at least 3. Now, they could get knocked off somewhere along the road, end up with 4, end up with 5, could be 6. It's hard to say, but to get to the adult stage, they'll have to have 3 individual hosts at the minimum. And so these stages are divided into 3 sections. We start off with larva. The larva has 6 legs. They only feed on small mammals, and then they feed until they are large enough to molt their own exoskeleton, at which point they will leave the host. Then the next stage is nymph, really similar to the larva stage, except that the nymphs will have 8 legs instead of 6. They feed on slightly larger animals and feed until they're large enough to molt out of their exoskeleton. And the final stage, adult, the tick still has 8 legs. They feed on the largest mammals, such as humans, dogs, or livestock. This is the stage in which reproduction will take place, and also the stage in which the males and females become differentiated from each other. And so the male behavior at this point is to take small amounts of blood from the host, wander on the surface of the host in search of an attached female tick, and after finding said attached female tick, it will mate and fall right off the host. After the male falls off the host, there isn't a lot left for it to do, so they pretty much live out the rest of their days there, which isn't a whole lot of days. As far as the females go, they find a spot to consume blood and engorge themselves. That's when you see the ticks with huge bellies full of blood, really gross stuff. I didn't include any of those pictures in there, but they pretty much, once they're in their spot engorging themselves, they wait for a male to reproduce with. And once that male finds them, they mate, and once fertilized, she will fall off the host and find a good spot to lay her eggs. And then the blood that she finds from, the blood that she gets from the host will be used to support the energy needs of the next generation. And then here's just a little diagram to kind of help visualize this a little bit, right? Over here, we have the standard, the beginning, right? The female ticks laying her eggs on the ground. They lay a whole bunch of eggs like most insects do. So then the first one, once the eggs hatch, they become larvae. And then you got a little diagram here, small squirrel. They'll eat the squirrel's blood for a little while. And then again, fall off, find a little bit bigger one, get enough there, fall off, then they're ready for the big one. All right. And so the way that these ticks obtain food, it sounds really simple, but I found out that it was actually a little bit more complex than I really thought, right? And so I found this video here. It's like 4 minutes, so I won't play it now, but it is a pretty decent video, like pretty informative about like how they get from their grassland all the way to the point of getting blood out of another animal. And so just to real quick overview it, I guess if you want to go in depth more, the video is pretty nice, but basically over here, right, how they have these kind of, I I guess this isn't a great picture for it, but they have these small hooks that can catch onto things such as like fur or fabric for humans, or just hair on the skin. They pretty much sit in their grass. That's why, like, when you go in the tall grass, you get a lot of ticks. That's where they hang out, is they usually go to the tips of the grass and just sort of wave their arms around, waiting for someone to walk by and brush on them. Once that does happen, they latch on, and then they're in. And so after that, they just kind of look around on the host, looking for some good spots to get blood from. It can't be too hairy. It's got to have a good spot to the skin. And once they find that, it's not so much of a bite that they do, but it's more of like brushing these really sharp appendages along the skin. And man, maybe I should have showed this video. Basically, they just brush they brush them along the skin. These appendages are really, really sharp, don't take a lot of force to break the skin. And they do that until they find the spot, and then they're in. And then the reproduction cycle, we already kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's their main purpose for acquiring blood, as is the case for most organisms. It's just for reproduction, so that you can use the energy from that blood to get the next cycle of life going. And so, as we discussed earlier, it's a 3-stage tick. The mating occurs when the unattached male tick comes into contact with the attached female. So yeah, the female is getting blood while she's getting it from the male tick. And once fertilized and engorged with blood, the female drops out the host. And these females, if they do successfully find a place to lay eggs, they can get a lot of them, between 1,500 and 5,000 at a time. And then after laying the eggs, the female will die. They don't get on another and try it again. Once they reproduce, they're pretty much done and their purpose is over. And so for competition, there's not really a whole lot of competition for ticks. They might have a little bit of it between the species themselves, like as far as getting a good spot on a blade of grass to latch on. But really there's just so much space on a big organism like a human or like a cow or a horse that they're not going to be fighting individually for a spot, unless it's a really good spot. But I would really think that it would make more sense for two ticks on one organism to just go find different spots. You could also maybe say that they compete with mosquitoes, because they're both parasitic, looking for your blood from mammals. But again, with the whole, the amount of skin that the body has, I've never really seen two mosquitoes fighting for one spot. So I would think that it's more of a competition at least for the ticks, it's more of a competition of just getting onto the host. Once you're on the host, I'd say that the easy part's done. But I guess I'm not a tick, so could not say for sure. And then mutualistic relationships with ticks. So the majority of relationships other organisms have with species of ticks would be classified as parasitic, again, meaning that the host is harmed while the parasite benefits. And although there isn't really any true mutualism with Dermacentor variabilis, there is one example of commensalism, which is an interaction in which one species benefits while the other species is not affected. There is one case of this commensalism in the ticks carrying Lyme disease, which is the relationship between ticks and the strain of bacteria, Borrelia burgdorferi, which causes Lyme disease. And so a quick overview on this strain of bacteria. It's responsible for Lyme disease in humans. Now, it's not a super deadly disease. I think Google said there was about 11 people that have died from Lyme disease since the 80s. But still, it does have some bad symptoms such as rash, fever, and just like this is kind of the telltale sign of Lyme disease. You get a little bullseye pattern around the bite. And yeah, nobody really wants to deal with, rash and fever, flu-like symptoms, stuff like that. But these bacteria live inside of the ticks and are transmitted to the host organisms through the blood that is taken in from the tick. So while the tick is taking in blood, there's also a certain amount of things from the tick that are getting put into the blood, one of these things being the Borrelia burgdorferi. And so because that the bacteria is being majorly benefited by it being transmitted, right? They're getting into a whole new environment, a whole new place to grow, reproduce, and all that. They're benefiting tremendously, whereas the tick isn't benefiting, right? Ticks don't get anything. They don't get better reproductive advantages by infecting organisms with Lyme disease, but they also don't get affected by the Lyme disease, so that would be classified as a commensalistic relationship. And then I think that wraps it up. Yeah, so there is the overview. Again, really good video right there about the, actually I guess, might as well throw it in there. I'll just skip. So this is the part where they're, I guess I don't know if anybody would still be watching right now, but this is the part where these grabbing parts, this is what grabs on.
Like your sleeve. Now you see her.
And so yeah, that just shows like they get picked up pretty easy like that. And then when they're on the skin,
a nice spot to bite into for blood. Meals. A tick needs enough blood to grow from larva.
Oh, we've already gone over that.
And then for feed. Let's check out a nymph. To grow it is all mouth.
There it is.
It digs into us using 2 sets of hooks. The hooks wriggle into the skin. They pull our flesh out of the way and push in this mouth part, the hypostome. Those hooks anchor the tick to us for the long haul, like mini harpoons. While the speedy mosquito digs in, sucks our blood, and splits, all within seconds. A tick nymph stays on for days. 3 days if we don't find it before then. Compounds in their saliva help blood pool under the surface of our skin. The nymph sips it through its mouth parts, like drinking from a straw. When a tick is full, and I mean completely full, it falls off wherever it may be.
All right, yeah. So there's the overview on all that too. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff. And that kind of wraps it up. Thank you if you're still here.